As of November 19th, we have YAML Metadata. That means we can do aliases and tags within a YAML metadata of our documents now in Obsidian. Welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, my name is Bryan Jenks, and today I'm going to be talking about the latest Obsidian release. It's not the absolute bleeding edge. We've had some bug fixes. Currently we're at 9.17 as of November 24th, but what I'm going to be talking about today is the release on November 19th, which I believe was 9.16. But what this gives given us now is YAML metadata inside of our markdown documents in Obsidian. This opens up a whole new swath of possibilities, such as obscuring our metadata, like the tags that we set or the aliases for a particular file, all within the metadata that's not actually visible in the document preview. Now, we've been warned about metadata was going to be coming, which is why we were advised to not use the triple dash syntax in the markdown documents, which typically stands for a line break. But at the beginning of a document, when you do two sets of those triple dash line breaks, in between that, right at the top of the document, is usually reserved for YAML front matter. YAML is not another markup language or something like that. But basically, it's a shorthand notation of describing metadata for your documents. And what we're going to talk about today is what can you do with this right now, what is potentially planned, and what are some uses you might actually have for this in your vault and with your documents. If this sounds like something that interests you, stay tuned. So like I said, as of release 9.16, we now have YAML metadata available to us in our documents within Obsidian. So what does that look like? What can I do with that? Why should I care? And how can it benefit me? So as for how it looks, I have a template for this already. I can just insert, and we have these three dashes. Typically in Markdown, what that would look like is a line preview or a line break. So if I had some text here and some text there, and between them I put three dashes, you would see a line. Now this is my custom formatting in here, so don't worry about that, but it's basically a line displays. Now, if you have two of these at the top of a document, that is actually treated as something special. It is called YAML front matter. It's metadata about your document telling it or telling some processor what to do with that information in regards to your document. So we can insert that, and I can say, yep, insert my YAML template, which is those two. So you see they're green now. Normally, it's gray for the markdown lines, but when we do the actual two up here at the top of the document, and this is important, you have to have them at the absolute top with nothing before them to actually count as the front matter. So between them, we can actually put in our YAML metadata. What does that look like, and what do we currently have available? Now, currently, we only have two options available, aliases and tags. So we can do aliases and tags. Okay, cool. How do we go from there? What do I do with that? What does that look like? But really what you do is you list metadata with specific syntax, usually colons and then sub-levels with dashes. So like I could say, hey, we're going to have a colon. Now you can see it changed color. Aliases. What are the aliases? There are a couple ways to define a list of elements in YAML. And it depends on what you really want to do for you. If you have like long lists of aliases you want to list, you might want to do the sub-levels, like, let's say long name of a file here. I can't spell. So you might want to do that if you have long file names, but another option available to you is doing arrays with YAML. So what that might look like is two square brackets, and inside we could say a short title. So I could say zettelkasten, and then another one ADHD, another one index, and so that might be more to your liking, especially if you're going to do this with tags. But with aliases, you might have long file names like I do, and you might want to do the listing variety like this. Now you can only do one of these options at a time, because you can see like now this one, this alias metadata right here is looking at the array next to it. It's like, I don't know what that is. What's going on there? So if we did this, it's not going to actually display up in here as it should. It's actually going to be causing an error. But now let me show you what happens when we remove the error. So if I actually get rid of this line here, and actually tags will also cause an issue, but if we actually have just the array right here, and we open up a link, you can see now in aliases we have these little arrow symbols, alias, alias, alias. And so we can see that now Workbench can be aliased to zettelkasten. or ADHD. What does that mean? What does that look like? So really what aliases are letting you do is you can click on this alias now, or select that alias, and I can say, yes, I want the zettelkasten alias for Workbench. And doing that inputs the name of the link, just like as if I selected the file, but with the display text zettelkasten. So now it actually displays that file. So like this is the Workbench file, this is the Workbench file in preview, and it's showing me the contents of the Workbench file, zettelkasten. So really, what aliases allow you to do is select the name, or select a link of your file, and have it inserted already with a specific preview text. Because normally what I might have to do in this instance is say, okay, I want my Workbench, but I don't want it to say Workbench, so I have to do 2 arrows to go into the link, put a pipe, and then start typing zettelkasten. So like, instead of having to type it all out, it now is already set up for you, and you can do this in metadata. And you can see on the right-hand screen, right-hand side of the screen, that I have the preview version of the same document. There's nothing up at the top. So all of this metadata is obscured from preview. You don't see it. It doesn't clutter up your interface, your screen, or anything. It's just out of the way, telling you what you can do with this document and getting out of your way, but without being too busy and noisy on your actual display. So like I said, we have a couple of approaches we can do with this. I can have an array with the square brackets and comma separated values if you have special characters like an ampersand. So let me do an example. So I have a paper in here called an ampersand and tidy data. So I also have spaces in here. Might cause an issue. So let's see what happens. If I actually do the link, we have tidy data, but not the ampersand. So the space was handled correctly, but the special character of the ampersand was not. And that may not be what I actually want. Now for aliases, this doesn't matter because the alias is just doing display text and it's not actually linking to my file tidy data with the ampersand, which is a research paper, but it doesn't matter. But really, if you want to have those special characters displayed, you actually have to wrap them in quotes. So let me just wrap those. Whoops. Wrap them in quotes. And now it actually displays that special character, the ampersand, and the space that came before it. So if you're going to have special characters in the YAML metadata, you have to wrap them with double quotes. Now we also don't have to use an array this way. If you have a bunch of aliases you want to associate this file with and you want to have it vertical because you prefer that format, you can actually have a list like this. You could say zettelkasten here. I could do ADHD there. I could do index that way. And that should all work fine. So I can now link, and it works exactly as we would expect it to. It's depending on whichever way you want to use and list your items. You can do the array syntax, you can do the sub list. Now with YAML, and I will post some links to some other YouTubers' videos on YAML that I think are really informative, but not too in the weeds. Like there's one that's really a high level overview, and then one that gets a little bit more into the weeds about YAML if you're interested. It's not a super complex language, markup language, but it is useful to know because it's used in R Markdown. It's used in a lot of other tools that use Markdown and actually want to change some metadata about those documents, like blog generators that use Markdown files. Those types of things, YAML is very important, and so it could benefit you to learn YAML. And it's not too complex. To really do everything you need to do for at least this update in Obsidian right now is really just know this listing, know how to do the arrays, wrap special characters in quotes, and you have to do a colon to separate the actual what metadata are we talking about, and then the values for that metadata, the array or the list, and then indentation matters. It's really, that's one of the biggest things with YAML that you're just gonna have to remember is that indentation matters. If I have ADHD here and I add an extra space, normally this throws an error. Let's see if it does in here. Yes. So you can see I added one more space of indentation here, and now it thinks it's part of that alias, and it's not. So indentation matters with YAML, and then depending on how deep you want to go, I'll put some links into this in the pinned comment below for you around this timestamp. A quick side note, if you like a lot of the content that I put out on Obsidian and you want to get updates from me and see anything that potentially could be coming, I might be working on a course in the future, who knows. I do have a newsletter I just have set up. It's still in the works, but I have a newsletter. You can grab a link to that in the pinned comment below, as well as the video description. I don't have much of anything set up yet. It's still new, but if you want to get any advance notice or have a direct line of communication with me beyond just my Discord, you can sign up at that link below, and I do provide all of my custom CSS, my Obsidian templates, and a few other documents, and depending on what people ask for, of my own personal vault if you sign up for the newsletter. So hope to see you there. All right, back to YAML. So the other piece of metadata we can now modify is tags. So if I actually put tag, actually let's do this first. So tags, as they normally appear in Obsidian, I use emojis this way. There are pros and cons to actually doing that, and I'm not going to get too in the specifics of should you do this, should you not. It really just, it depends. From now, this is what I do, this is what works for me, and we're going to move on from there. So what most people tend to do is they will make a tag with hashtag and then something like productivity. If I could spell tivity. So it might do tags like this and add a bunch of those at the beginning of their documents. Zettelkasten and notes, whatever. You can see they have their tags. I click on the tag, it actually shows a search for that tag. Great. So that is typically how people are using tags. They'll tag this metadata for their documents. Now, if you've seen any of my other videos, like my workflow video or anything really that I put out, I talk about this a lot, about how I don't use the hashtags this way. The tags that actually appear in your tag menu, these are basically indicators of status of my notes, not necessarily things like productivity, learning, zettelkasten, spaced repetition. No, I don't use tags in the traditional sense, and I have a whole new video planned that's going to be talking about that in depth, as well as posts. But in any case, this is what is typically done. But if you actually use this method of tags, we can no longer, well, we can set it up so that we don't have to have all these things cluttering the interface when you're showing a preview of your document. So just like how we had aliases here, and we can also put tags. So what that will do for you, if I put do tags, and let's do brackets, we don't have to use hashtags anymore. The same rules apply, quotes around special characters if you have them, and I think spaces will be okay. But let's see, actually for the tags it wasn't before, we'll see. So let's do productivity, if I can spell right, zettelkasten, and let's do one with a space to see if it works or not. Hello world. So now what this will do for us, let's get rid of these tags. We don't have any tags in there anymore, but we do have the metadata and an array in YAML of comma separated tags, productivity, zettelkasten, and hello world. Let's see what this looks like. Does this work? So I don't use tags often, so you can see that right here at the bottom, they do work, and the space even works. So that's new. I think before we actually had to use underscores because it was actually inline in the document, because if I did hello world there, you could see the tag doesn't work. We just have the word hello. So what this will let you do now is in the metadata, describing your tags, not only can you actually use spaces between the words to use phrases to describe your tags without having to do a bunch of underscores, but now, just like the aliases, there's nothing in the preview. So you can have a ton of tags describing your documents for filtering, searching, however you decide to use tags. You can now do this without having them actually cluttering up your document. So your document can just be visible content and not the metadata and classification and taxonomy that you apply to your notes that can clutter up that interface. It's a much cleaner way of managing things like categorization and description of what your documents are doing. And with aliases, it makes it easier to describe something with different words without having to do a lot of extra typing to change the preview of that link text. Aliases are still an insider's release. Now, it was said that they are supposed to appear in the backlinks section of documents under unlinked mentions for some of these words. And I did some checking, and I could not find that piece of functionality working. And maybe it's just a bug and it'll be fixed eventually, but for now, they don't appear there. But it was supposed to be that your aliases, if you searched for zettelkasten or something like that, your backlinks, it would actually show the documents that are aliasing that text or something around thereabouts. But as of right now, this doesn't work. Today is November 24th, and I'm currently using 9.17 that had some bug fixes, and we don't have that yet. But that's so far the only issue we've really come across and found so far. Now, I can't take credit for this list, I just copied this from the forum, but there are a lot of great ideas already around what aliases can be used for, some of which included different casing, such as lowercase and uppercase of a single word, acronyms, using alternative languages. So for instance, if I was going to talk about certain Norse and Nordic terms, which I actually do have some notes on, I'm not sure if I actually included the umlauts for this reason, but now I could potentially do that. Because normally there's a lot of special notation characters in foreign languages. So that would be something very useful that you could do. Different languages, so education or this is the same thing, but you could also have like different languages. So I could say for the English word education, then I could have, the Spanish word or whatever it might be. More for acronyms, different countries, states. There's the languages, file names, hidden symbols, and not including a zettelkasten prefix. That would be a big thing for a lot of people. A lot of people still want to use the zettelkasten prefixer, even though for most intents and purposes, I don't really see a need to do that, especially if you use like file names the way I do, where each file is its own unique note. Sure, it might have sections, but that note has a long and descriptive title. But to each their own. This would actually make that abstraction easier to manage, because now you could just say, instead of 11-digit or whatever word file name, you can just have the alias display the text, which would be really useful. We also have abbreviations, and then something that really was interesting that came up that I didn't think about that is really cool would be using aliases with different drug names, like generics versus actual, I forget the term, but the non-generic and generic medications, or shorthand and convenient references to different parts of the brain, anatomy, physiology, psychology, different things like that. A lot of different uses about what we could do with aliases. Basically saying that I don't have to say brain, or I don't have to say like the full section of the brain for what I want and then type that in display text. I could just say, hey, prefrontal cortex, and then have the text already alias. So I could just say, oh yes, I want that specific option for prefrontal cortex. I want it to say dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Great. That is an amazing option that saves me a lot of typing, if I ever had a note about the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which I don't. But the uses abound. This could help a lot of people save a lot of time, a lot of typing. And one thing I don't like about Roam, not to throw shade, but just like one thing I don't like about Roam versus Obsidian in this case is that you spend a lot of time indexing, databasing, and setting up management of metadata for your documents. I want to type as little as possible to get as much value as possible and just have things get out of my way, be simpler, and still provide a lot of power and use, but not take up more time in the customization and configuration. Like, I don't want to spend 3 hours configuring my Obsidian workflow. I want to spend 3 hours writing notes, developing knowledge, connecting notes together. And if I need to tweak something, so be it. Get it out of my way, get it done quickly, and then back to what I'm actually using this application for. If you're not using this to actually get something done and you're just playing around with it, if that's what you want to do and that's okay with you, by all means, have fun. I think it's a great time to play around with our editors and figure out this stuff. But if it's too distracting to actually help you be productive, then it's probably not the tool that you need to be using. So I like things like this that help you get more done, get out of your way, and don't take up more of your time with configuration versus actual use. Now lastly, in talking with the developers about some of the options we can get with YAML metadata, there were plans to add a CSS class attribute, so that way we could actually specify different style sheets we want to have for our documents. So in our own Obsidian editor, maybe it looks like we might be able to say, oh, this specific note page, I want that to display with that particular color theme, not my default theme. We can already set up a different theme for the publish websites, which, if you don't know, I have a publish website. Let me see if I can get that set up here. Publish is a Obsidian service that is paid, but you can basically have hosting for your note vault, and you can choose what you want up there. And what I have is, this doesn't display correctly, sadly, my little ASCII art, but you can actually have your vault set up so anybody can access this. This is my public facing notes, and you can go to, the index is here obviously, but my interests, you can look at those, programming, and which language you want, let's go to C++, see all the different things about that, and basically traverse somebody's vault. And this is a great service. Now publish, what that will let you do is select a specific style sheet. So in my vault, I have obsidian.css, which is why you see my editor look this way, my own custom theme. Now publish, if you did publish.css, I believe that's the way you do it, whatever you have in that would actually be what's displayed on your published website, not your obsidian.css. So having that sort of functionality, but for individual notes through a CSS class attribute in the YAML metadata would be very cool. And if you have a use for that, great. You might want to say, hey, this specific type of note, something that's more factual versus an idea, an opinion that you developed, like the Earth is round. So you can make that, oh, that is a fact note. Whereas I think I might have an idea like the Earth is round because of a particular way that star dust formed or something. That could be like an opinion, and then you have them formatted differently based on that classification. Ideas, who knows, you might have a use for that. I think it's really cool. And then there were some talks about using other metadata like links, related, or references. Now, my thoughts on that and what I provided as feedback were links, I don't really need a metadata part for that. I mean, all of this is useful. It's useful to have options, but at the same time, I want to think like too much is overwhelming. You don't want to have paralysis of choice. So less options sometimes is better. Who knows? But what I suggested was using related and references are really useful, because links we just have in our document. Like I could say on one of my notes, I could say, hey, I have this note about hyperfocus being a double-edged sword. Well, in here I could say, oh, because my title of my notes are super descriptive, people with ADHD do not have a lack of attention, only an issue regulating attention. That fits in line with my text. That is a link. So I don't need metadata for my links to obscure them. I actually want to link them in line in my text. And that would work for me. But whereas related and references would be, related are things that are similar to this note, but are not directly referenced in line in that note. But I want to know, like, oh yes, this is actually related to that. I might want that to appear somewhere. And maybe I don't want to clutter up the interface and the actual text. Put that in metadata. That is an option that I think would be really cool to have. Whether I use it or not, neither here nor there. References, same sort of thing. Like related and references might be used by the same in the same way by the same people. Who knows? What I might actually use that for is saying, hey, a particular idea or idea note came after reading a particular piece of literature or reviewing something. So I might want to know, hey, that came from this particular paper. And I want to make sure I know I have that reference, like not necessarily like I'm directly citing something, but hey, I got this idea by reading that. And I might want to follow that up. Maybe it's close enough where I actually do need to input a citation if I read a paper or something. That might be some piece of information that I want to know, especially in metadata, without having it clutter up my interface. So those are some things that are coming down the pipe and some potential uses we have for them. And I think it's a really great release. I think it's really cool. I haven't gone in depth to editing my vault and adding all this stuff in yet, because I want to see how this particular feature matures a little bit more over the next few releases. I want to see what options we have in place so that I can just do one, big edit and add this stuff in if I choose to actually use it, and deciding what ways I do want to use it. It's all up in the air, and when I make that decision, I'll probably make a video about what I did. But in any case, YAML metadata, now we have it. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know. Give it a thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments, how you might actually use this feature. Do you think it's useful? How might you actually apply this to your vault? And if you'd like to talk more about this type of stuff with me and my community, feel free to join our Discord. It is in the description below. We have a fun time talking about a bunch of different topics and random things, cat photos, whatever. We have a lot of fun in there. And so if you'd like to join that, just click the link, come in, say hi, and we can all hang out. And a quick note before I go, thank you to the patrons who support this channel. We have several new patrons, but thank you, Devin, Ed, Hyungjun, Leonardo, Brandon, Klaus, Paul, John, Joel, John, a lot of Johns, Alberto. Thank you guys for supporting the channel on Patreon, and for everyone who donates through Buy Me a Coffee, PayPal, what have you. Anything you guys do is welcomed. It's really awesome, and I'm really appreciative of everybody who supports the channel. So thank you for watching, and I will catch you all in the next one.